You here, I know. Vanir versus JDXL is the game that we have right up next. We need to talk about this one. JDXL were undefeated. They lost versus X7 during Monday. And this brings the question, are they okay? Can they come back from this one? The other team is Vanir. You told me maybe Vanir because math makes it easier, but they're realistically looking into playoff standings if they can take this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not an easy task, and not with the game they have in front of them today. I think even talking, well, I can't remember specifically who it was earlier today, but like, didn't expect too many upsets either. JDXL, despite dropping a game to X7, still one of the best teams we have in the league, and I think a lot of that goes into the fact that even when sometimes they are making mistakes, they have individuals that kind of can just, even if it's not on a team level, can just, you know, remove these mistakes or fix these mistakes rather on the fly. They're a very difficult team to beat because you're not just like beating them in the early to mid game and then it's looking fine in the late game. You have to be ahead of them pretty much in all stages of the game, at least in terms of like knowing what you need to pull out your win condition.
And they keep exploring new picks as well. They're not afraid to do so. Often, I even talk with Tarek about this. Emin has a really good champion pool. Is this a strength or a weakness?
I think it is a strength as long as it is utilized in the right way. We have, so for instance, JDXL obviously quite closely tied in terms of that thematic to someone like Bison's in the LVP, who the running joke with them is that you can actually beat the team by not banning anything, because then they're so confused at the amount of options that they have to them. They just like, it's like blue screen. It's like just Bison's blue screen at that point. So with JDXL, they have a very similar kind of thematic of having many options and knowing what to do with them. I think they've used that very well. But the question is, again, whether it is appropriate and going in the right direction, not just doing it because they can.
And I want to look into the bot lane. I know we talked about this a lot. We make a lot of memes about Vanir. He's a really good AD carry alongside with the FGG. But I want to see the difference on 10 minutes and at 15. And this, to me, is quite important because at 10 minutes, Vanir has some issues. But he gets to 15 and he pulls back. He's limit testing constantly.
I mean, I think a lot of that also goes down to where the Herald usage sometimes come through from the side of JDXL. We have seen Kreox on weak side duty, and if they are deciding to open up a lane, well, you know, going down towards the bot lane just before that 14-minute mark kind of helps you in exploding gold leads after those 10 minutes. So I think a lot of that goes down to the fact that Vanir's hungry for resources, and I don't think he's hiding that in any way, shape, or form. You can see it in the way he plays. He wants to be the star player. He wants to be the one moving forward, and that kind of is the threat, but also kind of the terror to himself at times is the fact that, yes, he's his own hero, but he's also his own worst enemies at times.
Shall we start the champion select then?
Do you have the button?
Everyone, all at once.
Goldberg. Oh, all at once? 1, 2,
3. Yeah! Why did you go on 2? That is such an odd way to do it. Well, it works.
Is that how you do it in Portugal?
It worked. You say 2 and at 3, you hit it. You don't count 3 and hit it.
Oh, okay. Well,
you hit on 3.
These are strange traditions I'm learning about from our Portuguese friend here, but we're literally learning about draft priorities from these two teams. Seems like we have a lot of mainstays. Again, GP has been effectively the top laner of not just the patch, but the whole season at this split at this point. Of course, he was around in spring too, but he's just gone up to an absolute.
I think you can say season.
Honestly, at that point, well, but then Gwen was in spring, so it gets a little bit awkward around that. Either way, it's like this champion is not something you can really allow through the bans.
Udyr, interesting as well coming through here. So loads of newer champions coming through on the...
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, we talked about this previously.
Yeah, Udyr is being seen as a Wukong counter. So that might just signal a... Well, this signals
even Belveth. You told me this
as well. Yeah, so it's like if you are playing if you're playing some sorts of farming junglers, Udyr farms better than you and runs into your jungle and kills you. So in the early game, Udyr can be a really good check onto champions which want to really not interrupt the enemy jungler. So I think removing that maybe signals that JDXL want to pick a jungler which maybe wants to take it a bit slower and doesn't want to fight in the first 3 levels.
Well, I mean, that pretty much opened up Wukong for Vanir if they want to pick up that Wukong, or Belveth for themselves in the same rotation. So I feel like that's kind of like on blue side, that analogy makes more sense than on red side in that instance. And yeah, I mean, they had loads of power picks open once again, right? You got the Seri, you got all the junglers we just talked about.
Yumi as well.
Oliver's an option with Yumi. It's just like so many power picks to go through right now.
But so this is now a pretty big mind game because you're looking at the Yumi locked in. If you lock in the Zeri, you're risking the Twitch going through and the Twitch Yumi being the answer. So JDXL have left a lot open to be contested. I actually wondered at this point whether they left up so many first picks that they wanted something like the Belveth on second, because again, the Udyr is one of these potential counters could come in. That's the troubling cover, but the Zeri has been locked in.
I think that just I think you just slam Twitch immediately on the other side for Vanir. I think that's a champion that makes perfect sense. Good into Seri when you open up. If she hasn't had time to actually stack up her ultimate, can't dodge the auto attacks from the Twitch either. And then you get to just, the classic Tom and Jerry laying down towards the bottom lane with
This
the
would be very fun to see it locked in. It's the JDXL
but he goes
special.
back.
It's volley back. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, but again, you can, because of these first 3 bans, we aren't just talking about the hover because, oh, it's the new champion, oh, it's being hovered. It's because these bans do tend to signify that maybe something is coming in for it, because you don't want to have certain jungle matchups like the Rammus is actually a Belveth counter, for instance. But with that volley bear locked in, it does remove maybe some of that counter ability into something like that Belveth. So we're going back to try and test it Wukong.
I was going to say, Wukong just makes the most sense to me here because it creates so much skirmish potential. Yes, you'll be down in the first few levels in terms of like what Volleyback can do to influence the map, but as soon as you hit level 6, Wukong and Yuumi, such a potent combo too, because when you're invisible, if Yuumi on top of you, well, Yumi's invisible too. She opens up the Lost Chapter. It's just a very difficult situation. I am very, very surprised to not see a Twitch come through here. Seeing the Ezreal still is a fine combo with the Yuumi, but it speaks me to more like you want to play off towards the top side of the map, but your blue side, which means that, they can save counter pick for Kreox.
And it is also... I really, really wonder about this. I wonder if it's because the volley bear's locked in and you can gank through... But even then, ganking bot lane on red side is harder because you can't just go through the tri-brush and then go into the lane from your own blue side, right? You can't have the same kind of gank pathing. So I wonder why Vanir didn't opt into that Twitch. It would have felt relatively safe, unless this just says, actually, we don't want to put resources bot side, we want to put it top side instead. Maybe that's the way they're trying to go work about it. Of course, when JDXL did lose is when Kryze actually didn't have much impact on the map. Maybe they're saying, actually, Kryze is the lose condition for JDXL. Let's try and put something that's safe bot side, go top side instead.
Heading into second ban here, at least from what they are talking about here, JDXL banning out on and looking like just in general banning out tanks too, which kind of speaks to me like they're reading it differently, because if you're looking for these tanks up towards the top side, well then Vanir...
You're not putting resources there,
exactly. So it's going to be curious to see both teams right now just targeting that top side. I think it's fine for the side of Vanir, because if they are afraid of a potential counter pick coming through from top lane, well, having limited amount of resources in terms of available champions is not too bad if you want to blind pick, for example, Sejuani instead as one of these tank top laners, or just a Camille instead if that's what they're really looking for.
No pick yet for MNS, no idea of what he's going to pick, but in the end, do you pick for Kryze because you want to protect him the most? And also specifically because they seem they're trying to play for the top side for Dreampool. And you played as well on Vanir, and he has to show up today versus JDXL.
Yeah, Dreampool hasn't had the easiest of starts since the NLC. I think that Hasira, when on the game actually ended up going out on, was on a very strong performance on that. Now Dreampool has been a little disconnected from the team. It was enough versus Singularity to see them to the win, but the one before that, when they were playing... I'm trying to remember if it was an M&M game. Either way, they had a difficult run of things with Dreampool coming into his first game. I'm actually wondering if we're going to go see a Corki at this point. That would be very, very different, because I saw the Ahri ban and I'm like, only really Corki cares about that so much in terms of mid laners, but they've left themselves a lot of options.
Okay.
They are actually going to go towards that Corki. It has been locked.
Yeah, okay, so now you definitely got a scary scaling in terms of like both Seri and Corki champions that you need to take care of. And usually when we see the Corki, you want something that can kind of counteract the fact that it's really good in the late game. You need something to play for in the early game. And yeah, I couldn't see that because of the camera, but there we have it with the...
We got you this time.
Yeah, I know. It used to be you, now it's me. But coming through with the Yasuo Gragas is really a combo where you want to be able to hit this. You already have the Wukong too. You have a Yuumi to play around with. This screams team fighting. This screams skirmishing. And it just screams that you want to attack some of the more vulnerable members of JDXL.
Ooh, okay.
So going through a lot of different options. And it is going to be a carry for Kryze. Aurelia's locked in. And now you have a Gragas top lane that has to play into an Aurelia, which is not the most favoritist matchup of that, because you walk up to the wave and Gragas normally likes to disengage by hitting you with a body slam, then walking away, because the mini stun after that point. If Aurelia hits you with a stun, Q's onto you, you stun them, and they're still in range for the second Q. At that point, you basically don't get to disengage that trade, and a rally can start running you down. So I think that JDXL, they have themselves a lot of scaling. They also have themselves a side lane win condition too. This is looking like quite a scary composition from JDXL.
One other thing you can do as a Gragas is you should run the phase rush. You can body slam mid Q from Aurelia, and you cancel out the kind of research you get. So it's like, it's not going to be a winning matchup, but there's definitely tools of kind of neutralizing. I think it's interesting dynamic that they have. It's very much, let's play for the mid lane. Yasuo cannot fall behind, because you can't Ash roll on the bot side. Suri's very much going to be matching that scaling as well. They have the playmaker in Rakan. Eshrol's got the Yuumi, so you wanted to sit back, relax just a little bit. And also, it gives the Rakan so much time to influence the map. The Yuumi is not going to be able to match any of the roam timers in the early game, and because of that, JDXL, they get so much to play around with.
That was my big takeaway. I think if you want to play towards the mid lane, you're going to have a support deficit at that point because Yuumi can't get that. This is on. Excellent play coming out from the Wukong and the Gragas roams to really start getting something rolling. I think that JDXL, they're playing through Dan and FGG. They've shown much success through that this summer. I think that is a good sign for them, and they should be coming out with the advantage here.
So let's see what happens between these two teams on week 6, day 1, as we throw it to the casters. Viper in trouble.
Woo! That's us. We're the casters. Viper in trouble. That we're doing the thing. 4th game of the day. I'm intrigued, concerned, and confused by what we've seen in the draft. I mean, the Devs did a wonderful job discussing and debating and analysing as they do. That is their job description.
Yeah.
I mean, they did all right job, Ash. I don't want to give them too much of an ego.
I think Ashram is the best analyst among all of us.
I don't know if that's true, unfortunately. Bless him. Will you not behave with the momentum meter this game, please? Can you guys behave back there?
Yeah, please watch your momentum meter. Who did this last game? We didn't ask. It was Namera. See, I told you it was Namera.
I
told you.
It's because he's the only one who left.
Of course.
You know, places to be. But we are onto the Rift for our first game of the fourth game of the day. First game between these two teams.
The games have gone by so fast that we think it's the first game.
Yeah. Well, no, I just can't use words. For me, in this game, and you can feel free to disregard, disagree, call me stupid.
If Eminus doesn't booty wiggle, we're going to have problems here. He's not booty wiggling.
We have issues. We have problems.
Yep.
I want to focus on the junglers to go into this game.
Where's the wiggle? Where's the wiggle, Eminus? Nah.
It's just unprofessional.
He's going to grab a glass of water, you know?
Yeah. Dan and Kreox.
Hydrate yourselves. Go on.
What are we thinking about these junglers?
So, for me, Kreox was a really big shining light for Vanir before the durability patch, when he could bring in his Lee Sin and be the playmaker himself and get his team ahead on his own. After the durability patch, I feel like Vanir have struggled a little bit to find an identity as in how they would like to approach the game. Do they want to play hardcore early game with the Wukongs and the Volibears and start the aggression like at minute 3 or minute 4? Or do they want to translate towards scaling into the latter stages where they actually have big team fighting tools, such as Merbs, who is insane on hyper carries? And I think that so far has been the issue with Vanir, that they don't have necessarily a clear identity on how they want to play. On the other hand, for JDXL, I think they're one of the most active teams, I would say, in the early game, and that's due to Dan's champion pool so far. We saw Predurability, the Nocturne coming in, a lot of Volibear and Wukong going down as well, which means that you see a lot of proactivity, which means that you see a lot of Snowball in the early. Now, this is a double-edged sword for XL, because if this works for them, it's great. If it doesn't, which it did for a while versus X7, but then they turned it around, then it seems to be going really bad. And one of the problems is, unfortunately for them, that bot lane, that level 3, even though we do meme it a lot, it seems to be a very sore spot for the JDXL bot lane. And they need to be careful in this game.
It is a weakness, absolutely. And while it is funny, like, don't get me wrong, it is hilarious. The idea of coming in and saying, look, we're not necessarily going to be playing super well in the early game. And not to say that Venza and FGG are hilariously off the pace. We talked about the graphics, we talked through their stats. They're not awfully off the pace, and there are a lot of other teams that are in the same kind of position.
Yeah, and let's not forget that also Venza is at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to kills.
Exactly.
He has top kills. So it is a sore spot, but then they do come together as a team, and their team finding Stella and Venza does his job, right? But
how good would he be if his first 10 minutes
were deathless?
were like a strong level of League of Legends play. And I mean, again, by no means the worst bot lane in those first 10 minutes, but an area to improve. However, I am just looking across this map.
All right, so really quickly right here.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that there was an invade that happened because jungle is cleared from both sides, yet Dan is up one camp. So he has stolen away one from Kreox. Very importantly, though, the bot lane of JDXL, because they had that massive priority towards the bot side of the map, they moved up the river and secured also that scuttle crab. So right now you've got a bunch of priority towards the bot side of the map. You've got your volley bear towards the bot side of the map, and you could potentially pull in a gank. Talking about ganks.
Kry's gonna have to flash away from early engagement from Kreox, and we need to be keeping our eyes on Kry's because in the game against X7 in that series,
Oh boy, that on.
it was Kry's who was bullied, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was not one of his best performances, especially on the on, and this time onto a carry. He needs to be that much more careful, I would have to say. Dan has been spotted, of course, from the Tribush ward. So no early game shenanigans, other than that Kreox have successfully taken Kry's flash on the top side of the map. So I am actually expecting for Kreox to move towards the top side of the map again once he's cleared whatever remains from his bot quadrant in the jungle, and actually try to capitalize on the fact that Kry's is on a very vulnerable champion early on in the game, and if that Irelia doesn't manage to snowball to the point to how we saw Jax Blank's earlier Irelia snowball, it could be a liability for later on team fights if she's not that strong.
I was gonna say, because she can be very weak in the early stages, but a little bit of a push can go a long way with this champion. Less so against the Gragas than against the Gnar, because Dreampool does have a little bit more disengage and is gonna be a little bit tankier a little bit more often.
In my opinion, I feel like people are sleeping on the Gragas. Things like Fiora, Irelia, Tryndamere, usually champions that want to perma-dive you and get advantage onto you are just weak into Gragas, because the second you get dived, you can throw them back away. The second they dash or flash back in, you can body slam them after tower, you can slow them with your barrel, you can regen with your W. You've got so many tools that are anti-dive that it makes it so difficult for all those fighters on the top side of the map to get strong against you. And as you can see, Dreampool is also giga respecting the fact that there's a huge wave pushing against him from Kry's, and he's just gonna stay on the tower and soak in whatever minions end up underneath his turret. So, very well done so far by Vanir. Managed to get a very early gank on the board. Dreampool is keeping up in CS. He's about 17 CS down, I would say, but it's fine because you do not die to the Irelia, and this is very, very important. And right now, Kry's has to play a lot more careful on the top side, whilst they also secured their first dragon.
So you're telling me, and let me just get this right, Gragas is good because he can prevent being dove with a big ultimate knockback. He's got a knock-up stun and a slow, which makes him very effective.
Yes, and in this particular case, well,
actually, I don't know if he's going to be able to get out of this one. Going to be able to flash away and just has himself a little drink on the way out as well. But the thing that gets me is that description is also true of Janna.
Okay, here's the thing though. What I was alluding to is that when you have Wukong, Ezreal, and Yasuo, you're desperately looking for some AP damage.
Yes.
And with the buffs that Gragas has received in his AP ratio, his Q, and also his ease, a shorter cooldown, your body slam and your ultimate can very easily act as segues for Ericsson to just press his R button and get straight into the backline. So JDXL's carries are going to have to be very careful to not get hit by Cyclone, Whirlwind from Yasuo, I don't remember what it is, his Q when it's charged. So Wukong's R, Q from Yasuo, E from Gragas, and R from Gragas. There's 4 spells that can be thrown their way, and I only see very few ways to actually get away from these.
And improving that damage portfolio, giving that AP, as you mentioned, it's going to be pretty lush for them. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be enough in the very, very later stages, especially when you've got naturally tanks like the Volley Bear. Irelia is going to get very, very beefy as well, just naturally. Whether there'll be enough AP damage to prevent really great itemization from JDXL is yet to be seen. Is thinking about going towards Kry's, who has overextended. Dreampool is there in a whole big minion wave. The ultimate will land onto the Wukong as Kry's is going to try and fight his way out of this one, but Dreampool's going to knock him into the wall. Bot bang, dead. First blood, Gragas.
Yeah, again, Kreox returns just before Cry's flash goes off of cooldown. Really great stuff right there. And again, we mentioned how Kreox would usually find his own leads, especially on champions like Lee Sin pre-durability patch. Right now, he's playing a jungle that's more proactive in the early game, that can gank and get advantages on the side lanes. You definitely do not want this Irelia to be snowballing. He goes early, grabs Cry's flash, comes back, capitalizes. Very good stuff for Vanir's early game.
It was... Dan?
That's kind of illegal. You don't have top lane. You don't have mid lane. They're both back. They're just now back up on the map.
Dan?
He's gonna keep the Rift Herald interested.
Dan?
Are you communicating with him in some way?
Buddy? Pal, it's okay. You don't need to... It's fine. You can just...
Walk it off, boys.
Wait, no, it's fine. He's stayed so long. His team have now returned. He's like, look, I've got lane pro in 2 lanes. They've rotated. I mean, the good news is, for Dan, he wasted a lot of Vanir's time. Unfortunately, he wasted a lot of his time, and he is set on taking this Rift out. And it's
He's fully back.
FGG's had enough time to walk from bot up here to help
He
him out.
literally walked through river, yes. Okay, so you definitely do not want to be contesting, especially since that Rakan is level 6 as well. Volibear is extremely strong. You've got Corki, who's level 8. You've got Kreis, who's level 8. He's gone back. Almost has the Blade of the Ruin King in the inventory. So I think it was a little bit, I would say, hesitant for Vanir whether they wanted to fight or not. But yet again, you see Kreox. He's got his camp. He's got his pet onto him as well. Ready to dive, Kreis. Kreis does not necessarily have to shove in this wave because this wave is slowly going to push towards him. Dan is towards the top side of the map as well if Vanir want to pull off a dive. And obviously, let's not forget that Kreis does have his flash back up and available for himself. But I just really like the fact that we mentioned how Jaxplank's... oh, here we go.
He's going to be hot. Might knock up, but we'll be able to flash away from any further intrigue as Vanir cannot make the dive work. Dan is in the wings as well, so should keep Kreox at
Ericsson's
bay.
here too, though, and there's a bunch of ways to get that knock up.
Now from Kreis, though, he wants to try and catch members out, but Ericsson's going to be able to get the ultimate down, and they delete the Irelia. Dan moves forward, but can't do much more than scare them away from the teleport. Eminez does have himself a package, but the dive I don't think is going to be there.
That's 4 members towards the top side of the map. XL get nothing in return. They lose Kreis in the process again. Eminence very slow with the teleport. And honestly, remember how we were contemplating whether Riddle is the first team in the league or XL is the first team in the league? Because right now, currently in the standings, they are tied both in first. I think this is what I'm saying macro-wise. Riddle is so freaking strong. Kreis is bound to get dived. Yuumi spends so much time on the top side of the map. Bodley can't be dived because you're playing an Ezreal. Eminence on the offense.
FGG's here as well. It's going to be a kill going over to the Corki. I was about to make a joke about Eminence not having a solo kill yet. He still doesn't, but he does have his first on the board.
Yeah, and that's pretty good. Getting your Corki onto the board is super important. Getting these turret platings towards your Corki as well. But you need to be very careful right here because Yasuo will have ultimate backup.
He has support from FGG and Dan, who are going to show their faces and just keep them away. Kreox and Zaremba are both looking towards Eminence. He's going to flash to safety as JDXL make off with what they've gained.
Yeah, I think if he didn't flash right there, he would have been dead. Ericsson just had his ultimate up and available, but yet again, you've lost your flash, you cannot get back into river, FGG has no flash, no ult, Dan has no ult, and you have no reason to be inside this river. So Zaremba's ultimate onto the Yuumi is gonna be back up and available really soon. Ericsson has his ult. I think this dragon is gonna go to Vanir, and it's gonna mean 2 dragons stacked up for themselves. They're making that dragon to be a win condition for them, forcing XL to fight them earlier on to try and break possibly Soul Point. And the best possible scenario is that this is a Cloud Soul. After they kill this one for XL, the best possible scenario for Vanir is that this is probably a Hextech.
Well, it is a Cloud Soul, so JDXL going to be thanking the observers, because as we know, the observers choose what Dragon Soul
Oh, is that so?
Yeah,
Okay.
you have to be nice to the observers and then they give you what you want. Don't know how they do it in just normal games, but in tournament, on TR, that's definitely how it works.
Oh, of course it is.
And yeah, as you see, they're just reminding us that it is Cloud, so clearly some JDXL fans behind the scenes. And with the way they've been performing this
How it
split,
works, man.
it is, this is how it works. You can't prove that I'm wrong.
We've just deemed our observers biased.
Biased, simple as. But with the way that they've been performing so far in this game, not too surprised, but Vanir, for a team that has a negative win rate at the moment, putting up very staunch resistance.
And especially against the team that, again, is #1 in the league and known for their very aggressive early game, especially when Dan is on Volibear. You're expecting level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6 shenanigans. Here they come.
Here are the shenanigans, but the final chapter may well disengage matters. As JDXL going to be forced to move away.
Not a single summoner spell burned. The fact that you have Ezreal, Yuumi, there's such an undivable bot lane because you've got 3 combat summoners among the 2 in the bot lane. And if FTG does not have flash to be able to overreach after the arcane shift, it's going to be very actually difficult to disrupt that. Nevertheless, there's a bunch of tower platings that went down in the bot lane. There's a bunch of tower platings that went down in the mid lane, which means that both MNS and Venzer are actually pretty rich right now. You see they have bounties on their heads as well. MNS's Corki almost has that Luden's Echo as well. The second he has is going to be very important because, yes, Yuumi can heal, but what was most recently changed, not very recent, but like the most recent change to Yuumi was that her heal costs percentage of her mana now. So it's not just the flat, but it's also a percentage. So she can only heal that many times until she regens.
Which, you know what? I love it as a fact. But we are coming up to the 15-minute mark, so that means a few things. But let's have a remind ourselves of what the lovely Desk and Archon were talking about in our previous segment. Venzer, he's yet to die this game, which I am very impressed by.
We should have like a party button that we can press.
They have one on the desk.
For very obvious things, we should have a party button. So Singularity fighting level 5 versus level 7, party button. Venzer dying level 3, party button.
Dreampool, I mean, there's a lot of people moving up towards this top. I mean, everyone's moving up towards the top. Dreampool goes pretty low. FGG's there, but the knockup comes through from the Yasuo, and the damage is there. Dreampool gets the first kill of the fight, and it's Vanir who clean up the exchange.
Vanir have done so freaking well, shutting down Cries. And this is why I said earlier on, it doesn't matter if this Arella is 10, 20, 30, 40 CS ahead of you. If you keep constantly shutting her down in the side lane, she's never going to become that menace that you're afraid of. Luckily enough for JDXL, MNS has been perma-shoving that mid lane. The second that Ericsson leaves the lane to actually be a problem towards Cries, mid lane is being shoved, bot lane is being shoved. So the 2 hyper carries, AP and AD for JDXL, are doing a bunch of work on the map. Both towers went down at the same time in exchange of that Herald top.
Dan's trying to take down Ericsson Revenge, but has to flash away from Dreampool, who moves in to assist. And for Vanir, while the gold isn't looking so healthy for them, and you can see across the board where those leads lie.
Oh my god, mid lane.
Yeah, you know, sometimes MNS just farms, and it happens to the best of us. You just...
So, there was one list that was created. I'm really sorry. If anyone knows, please do link it in the chat who made it for the NLC. And there was gold to damage percentage. How much gold do you get and how much damage do you produce with that gold that you get? So MNS has a pretty high gold share, obviously, because he does farm a lot. He does get a bunch, or if not the majority of resources from JDXL. But his damage percentage output is through the freaking roof. I think per gold, he does 1.7 to 1.8, if I'm not wrong. And the average for LEC was around 1.3. So the dude is grabbing the resources, but he's pulling out big damage. And here on the Corki, he's going to be one of the main damage sources for his team, together with Venzer's Zeri.
Devil's Advocate.
Yes?
He's alone a lot, putting a lot of damage into individual targets of the big in the team. MNS like solo kills, you know. I haven't been here a couple of weeks.
I've never heard.
Yeah, I know.
Had something about 36 solo kills in 22 games in spring. You know who comes closer, actually? Because we made the research for LEC.
Who?
Zeus from T1 had 42, so only 6 kills more in 74 games. That is more than 3 times what MNS played.
And he still got 3-0'd by Riddle in the semi.
Oh my god,
I woke up and chose violence.
It was 3-1, not 3-0.
3-1?
Yeah.
Oh, was it? Doesn't sound right, but... JDXL are going to be on this Dragon right now, should be able to secure it. There's a contest, but there's not a big one. And that's going to be the first one going over to them. Slows down the opportunity for Zolbadan. Is going to move forward. Can't find Kreox, though, as he's already gone.
Yeah, and I think XL are trying to find possibly an opening right here because MNS did have the package. And that was a little bit questionable right there because Vanir seemed like they wanted to fight, but then also MNS is sporting the package. So do you really want to fight for a Cloud Drake, even if that means Soul Point? You don't. So Vanir do still expend the teleport, but do not get nothing for it. The damage, the gold is 4,000 in the lead for XL. But what is very mind-blowing is that I agree with the momentum meter. It's not moving because it doesn't necessarily mean that XL are actually actively winning right now. They were just about stopping Soul Point from the side of Vanir. Vanir actually have managed to shut down Cries. For the time being, he's only 700 gold up, 800 gold up to his counterpart, which is a Gragas. And then later on in the fights, when Yasuo scales and he has a very easy way in, possibly together with a Yuumi, it's going to be very problematic to deal with.
I mean, it could be indicative of a very close matchup, or it could be indicative of Nymera losing the remote. Either could happen, but Vanir are going to be able to grab themselves a bot tower. Top tower was secured by JDXL on the other side of the map, but Rift Herald didn't have the charge to get that outer. So the inner is going to take the full brunt.
Also, it's just MNS down in the bot lane against 4 members from Vanir. If Kreox managed to flash, get the knock up onto MNS instant dies underneath the tower, meaning that you can get inhibitor towers. XL are way behind the player right here. They allowed that Rift Herald to get so much on the map. The fact that this inhibitor tower went so low, only MNS to defend right there, and on the other hand, XL did not necessarily get anything on the map.
Very little on that inner tower. The outer tower was taken, but the problem is, a tower and more was secured on the other side of the map.
Almost inhibitor tower, so important.
2 towers were taken, almost the inhibitor tower falling. 20 minutes into the game, Vanir making the cross map look so easy. And Venza was split pushing, MNS was defending. What are the others doing?
Exactly. This is, I was just about to say, this is the least bloody game we've seen from JDXL ever this split.
Yes.
And I think ever in spring as well. I feel like the Volibear has not necessarily achieved much in the early game. The fact that, what they were mentioning on the desk, the fact that you have +1 on the map, that FTG and Rakan, was Zaremba is going to be sticking onto the Ezreal, they didn't achieve much with that either. If anything, Zaremba has been roaming around with Kreox on his back, and he's achieved more on the map than FTG has. So unless JDXL are bringing us the huge teamfight skills that we know they have later on with a hyper carry on the Zeri, with the hyper carry on the Corki, the early game looks pretty weak.
I have to agree with you. And yes, you mentioned those tools at the late stages could be very useful. And I mean, when they're in the hands of MNS and Venza, we know how great these individual players are. So I'm not concerned for JDXL just yet. However, I think Vanir have been putting on such a strong performance as Dan's going to get slowed up. The ultimate dove away from with his own, and he'll be able to escape. But Vanir have been on a completely different level to what we've used to.
How important that was for Dan to actually ult the Gragas ult, because you did not have vision on Ericsson's Yasuo. And this Yasuo just completed 2 items on 3rd item, which could potentially be something like an Infinity Edge. He's gonna start hurting so much. And it doesn't matter how much resistances you have onto this Volibear, Ericsson is 3 levels up. He's going to shred through you. The second he has level 16 on his ultimate as well. He's gonna be very feared. Again, I feel like XL are playing this very slow because they know they have the scaling, but Yasuo's scaling goes off the roof as well, and the most important thing is that he has one of the easiest ways in.
MNS needs to be a little careful as Dreampool gets the initial damage, but he's going to be able to return it in kind. But this has given some space for Venza up on the top lane with the Yasuo just to clear out another tower. This is brave.
This is Baron going down. MNS does have teleport if Vanir gets spotted right here, but again, their Baron is very quick. They have a Yasuo, they have a Wukong, they have an Ezreal, a lot of AD damage, a bunch of attack speed coming in from the Ezreal as well. And you've got a Yuumi for permanently shielding and healing you from all the Baron damage. I think JDXL's macro so far has been pretty poor. There's been a lot of towers that have been taken from the side of Vanir that have not necessarily been answered. And this shows a few of the weaknesses, I would say, in the early to mid. I feel like this has been, yes, they're 4,000k ahead, but I think this has been a passive income lead that they've gotten, and this has been the most shaky game we probably have seen them in.
And that's saying something, considering that we saw them lose last week for the first time this split, and if things continue going the way they are, we're in for a close one up against Vanir as well, who are a team that are in a similar position to X7 in the standings, and what we're kind of our renewed expectations for them are this split, a team fighting for those playoff spots, not necessarily looking to be at the top of the table come end of season with the way that things currently stand. But Dan is going to move forward and try to catch on the Bubs. Will be able to land the stun, but members are following through from Vanir. FGG can't get the engage off as Ericsson's looking to get the Dragon down, but the fight has continued. Dreampool goes low. They're looking to catch on to more members, and Cries is the victim as Ericsson needs to back away past the wind wall as Dan goes wide. FGG forced back as Murbs is forced forwards. Dreampool on the side, but the Ezreal's too aggressive. Eminez now joins the fray and looks towards Kreox, shoots him down, and now can turn towards Ericsson, who slides away. JDXL turn the fight around.
I cannot believe this was actually just a 3-for-1 for JDXL because their health bars went so low, but the fact that Venza and Eminence stayed alive till the very end meant that their hyper carries can dish out so much damage. And again, Cries has been the recipient of violence from the side of Vanir since the very get-go of this game. I think Vanir need to actually change their sights to either Eminence or Venza because they're the ones putting down the damage. Yet again, Dan has his sights onto Murbs. Ezreal right there. He dives a little bit too deep. His team cannot follow there. Cries can follow, Eminence can follow, Venza can follow because if they get hit by a knockup, Yasuo's gonna engage instantly on them. Kreox gets a very nice knockup, but just onto Cries, and Cries is not the primary damage dealer right here. You see how much damage the barrel did from Dreampool right there, but Murbs dives a little bit too far in. Eminence is able to dish out so much damage onto Kreox as well, and this ends up being a favorable trade for XL, grabbing the second dragon of the game for themselves as well. But again, that was a very close fight where there was not a single knock-up hit on a very crucial carry for the side of JDXL. Again, keep eyes peeled on Eminence and Venza and your eyes on Dreampool. If he gets that huge casket on one of the two main carries, this could go really south for XL really quickly.
Dan's moving forward, trying to find on to Kreox, but he's not going to be able to do so. But Kreox on the side gets melted through. Yuumi likely to go the same way. JDXL find another couple in a favorable exchange. And now Baron?
That should definitely be Baron right here. You see Cries is pushing the bot lane as well. Somebody's going to have to reply. Cries does have the teleport as well. But do you actually commit members onto Cries that has been dying over and over again just so you don't lose your outer tower? He's actually going to tip it in.
Dreampool, if he can get a good engage, this could be disastrous for JDXL. FGG on the side, though, could look for a flank. As JDXL, half health, Baron's still there, Murbs on the side. There's no jungler to steal it away, so it should just go the way of the current reigning leaders of the league.
Again, you see how scared JDXL looked there? The fact that they pull Cries' TP from the bot lane. This could have been a very free outer tower towards the bot side of the map. Maybe you can commit a bunch more members from the side of Vanir trying to punish him, but no, it's going to be Cries TPing in. JDXL actually securing the Baron on every single member right here, and this is a point where you can actually spread the pressure by having Eminence on one side, by having Cries on the other, and then moving the rest of the three as a three-core member, as three members core.
You'll get there.
I'm trying, man. It's hard. It's a fourth game.
Teleport's coming on through. JDXL want to keep the pressure up as Ericsson's the only defender of this inner tower. The tower's going to be turned off. The Yasuo could be in a heap of trouble as members of JDXL run rampant through, pick up another, and could look to pressure towards the base even.
Very decisive. Reminded me a little bit of what Riddle did earlier on with his dives from Stefan's Volibear. Again, pulling the trigger, making sure that everyone follows up. And this is going to be two lanes of pressure from the side of JDXL. Top side is under fire, middle is under fire with Cries bringing yet another wave in.
Vanir looked so good in the early game, but now it's all about JDXL as they force more pressure, looking potentially towards these Nexus towers. Eminence doing a bit of damage to them, as that's going to be a second inhibitor tower falling. JDXL, the pressure, the priority will fall on them as they look towards the Nexus towers potentially. It looks like JDXL might be sticking around. Ericsson is still dead. 5 seconds more. But they're going to retreat.
You do still have the Baron buff. You can actually back on. You actually have half the duration almost left of this Baron buff. What you do is you back, you get more items with all of this gold that you just banked in, and you just bundle up as 4 members and shoving the bot side of the map, which is the last remaining inhibitor for the side of Vanir.
Vanir.
4,000 gold lead in the mid lane. 4,000. gold lead in the mid lane.
Sometimes
insane.
it just happens, you know? And it feels like in this game, where Vanir weren't ever necessarily in full control, you look quizzical.
That's one of the very few times that I've seen solo laners bunch up together to shove in the same wave.
He heard us making fun about solo kills, so he has to stay with a buddy at all times.
So Kreox is like, you ain't getting none this game, sorry, buddy.
It looks like they're actually just going to group as a unit, which makes some sense because this tower would be blown over by a very gentle breeze.
Oh, look at Dreampool. Oh. Because the tower fell down, he couldn't actually have that very aggressive positioning inside the bush, which could have possibly gotten a pretty huge cast onto someone like Venza or Eminus.
This has the feelings of an endgame team fight in the works. If JDXL win it, of course, Vanir still have plenty of tools they can use to defend. The ultimate's coming through, layering from Ericsson, but do they have enough damage? No one's just yet. And JDXL just have a little bit too much to sustain. The health bars are a little too high, and it looks like Vanir have been routed. It was a valiant effort, but JDXL will retain their top spot.
And that was a really good try right there. The quadruple man knock up into the Yasuo ult, but I think Venza and Eminence right there melted everyone down. Level 17 on the Corki, level 16 on the Venza, and JDXL do not want to be tied to no other team in the league. They're going to take Vanir down and solidify themselves as #1 in the NLC.
Eminence is a bit of a monster, you know? Stellar performance on the Corki. JDXL...
No solo kills required for a monstrous
none
performance.
Required. This is, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. JDXL looks really convincing at the end of that game. In the beginning parts, a little bit less so.
Yeah, that was very shaky. I think Kreox getting punished that much without a lot going on the other side of the map. But passively it was. Eminence was getting played. Venza was getting played as well. What really worries me is the fact that FTG was not necessarily able to outroam a Yuumi and get his team ahead in the early. Kreox was not being covered on for the majority of the time. The vision wasn't necessarily going down. They allowed Kreox a little bit too much freedom and productivity in the early game to the point where take it away, I guess. My analysis doesn't matter.
I was actually going to hold here because they were like moving their arms a lot and I want to see how long they could keep going before they get tired. But unfortunately, they're not doing it anymore because you guys are boring. But we will hand over to the desk to break us down that game.
What can I say? I just
Deb?
I just like aerobics. So this
What?
is a one-person desk.
What is even that Deb? Oh, that's 2050 Deb. That is a... I'm not ready for that one. Okay, JDXL versus Vanir. Vanir started off, I would say, strong, slowing down that JDXL early game that we always see like a bloodbath, then just constantly ganking. What happened though? A lot of priority to the top side.
It was because one of JDXL's win conditions was Aurelia gets ahead, Aurelia smashes across the map. So there were a lot of ganks which went towards top side. Of course, they had that Yasuo Gragas combination with the Wukong being thrown in. Lots of knockups, lots of damage, and a lot of CC to keep that Aurelia in place. I believe we actually have a clip of a couple of the top lane plays. We'd love to kind of just show that on screen, right? Because you can see that Kreox was continually pushing in, having threats onto the Gragas at various points. But when you bring this many people to the party, it gets very dangerous. We were worried a little bit about what would happen with Rakan being able to match some of those rotation timers instead of that Yuumi, but it didn't really come into fruition.
And while I really think that Vanir did a really good job at creating these plays rather, I think the times when they are not doing stuff is really where JDXL get a lot of their leads too, because if you just take them matchup by matchup, yes, the Gragas is kind of neutralizing the Aurelia, at least in terms of, oh, I'm not dying and can clear the waves. He's still falling very far behind in the CS department. It was the same case for the Yasuo against Corki in the mid lane too, with Eminence kind of running away with the gold lead, and also a little bit down towards the bottom side too. So even while that play happened, they're still 3k behind just in that time, right? And Eminence is spending a lot of time just killing mid lane as well. So I think the cost of their plays still were traded back from the side of JDXL in terms of them retaining their lead.
And even if you are neutralizing in terms of kills, you're losing push in pretty much all your lanes at the same time. In fact, I think when that play top happens, they should lose both mid and bot outer turrets at the same time because it just kind of gets rolled through it after that point. So the amount of resources they put in top, obviously you could see the importance that it had to them of shutting out the Aurelia. But if you can't be efficient about the resources you're going to use, you are going to run into other issues.
This is a different sort of playstyle from JDXL. They were approaching this game of, we don't need to win in terms of kills, we can just farm away. We are secured on our late game. And looking into both competitions, late game-wise, if they were tied up, where would you give the advantage?
Here's the thing, I actually think a lot of it comes down to execution. I think this fight here specifically could have gone way different, but they're playing it very messy from the side of Vanir. Airshell gets caught, Merps rather gets caught by because the Archon shifts immediately. Dreampool has come in with a teleport, but all of a sudden he has to expend all his cooldowns. Yasuo ult has already been used, so when a 3-man knockup comes through, he's not in a position to actually capitalize on it. I think this fight could have gone in the way of Vanir. The thing is, as a team, they weren't they really didn't have the cohesion to pull it off.
And I think what JDXL did very well there was decisively saying, screw it, we're going for this person. And that worked out very well for them. They made sure that when Gragas was on that flank, they managed to close him down very, very quickly. Because when you have the Yasuo ult, when you have the Gragas throwing something into the fray in the Wukong, your first amount of mobility is actually quite strong. Your first target access very, very big. After that's used, you can't stick to them. That's where JDXL started to run away with it. When they used all of their big combos onto the Aurelia, after that point, you're not catching the Zeri, you're not catching the Corki, and it gets close because, of course, they ended up playing it out mechanically quite well after that point. It's not enough at that point. JDXL's champions are just more mobile at longer range to hit the targets they need to.
And in the end, JDXL comes across with another victory, recuperating from what happened on Monday. This gives us the pleasure to interview someone that is not Tarok. It is Dan. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, but like a little bit disappointed in our game, to be honest. I think we haven't shown the last few games to be as clean as we should be. Even against X7, we played well for like 15 minutes and then threw the game. I think this game also we can do a lot better. So happy with the win, but not happy with the overall performance, and maybe the draft can be a little bit different.
So the different approach you brought into this game, more passive-wise, you're still disappointed with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think we should be way more aggressive, and the mistakes that they made should have been punished.
Okay.
Way harder. So I think we can do a lot better. I think it's not a good game from us.
So you talked about the draft as well. Now, we had a lot of thoughts about the very early into the draft, actually, because we saw a lot of Bel'Veth hovers. We saw the Udyr ban, which has kind of been theorized as a bit of a Bel'Veth answer. What was your take on the first couple of rounds and this kind of fencing match of, ooh, do you take the Bel'Veth? No, I'm going to take the Bel'Veth, and just hovering over it. Was that something that was intentional, or was that something that it was just kind of out there for fun?
We were joking in the lobby about picking Bel'Veth and me picking Rammus into it to counter it. So I think it was just like both teams just having a bit of fun. Not too much to read into, but I do think the champion is really strong, and we will see. Maybe on Wednesday we'll see some Bel'Veth. Who knows?
I hope so too.
Ooh, versus Riddle, and okay, spicy. Tell me something. And now going back into what happened and to today, do you think that the loss from Monday affected the team effectiveness? You guys are still recovering, or are you guys cool? Just a loss, move on.
I think we're fine, but I think it was a wake-up call for us, honestly.
Okay.
Like, I think we were hard winning against X7 until the third Drake when we dropped tempo, and we kind of have a failed blue buff handoff where our brand couldn't get tempo to get his item and be on Drake at the same time. So, yeah, I think for us we were getting a little bit complacent because we were 9-0. We were kind of like just rolling through all the games, and I think mid-split this wake-up call is pretty good for us. We've been kind of a bit relaxed in scrims too, so hopefully we step it up for the rest of the split now.
Hey, good slap in the face is always good, I would say, to wake you up. Now, on Wednesday versus Riddle, you gotta wake up somehow. I'm a violent guy. Going on to Wednesday versus Riddle, do you think this is going to be the match of the split?
I think it's a preview of the final, to be honest. I think us and Riddle are like way above everybody else. Riddle has pretty good macro and pretty good players too. I think their laners and jungler are playing really well. So yeah, I think it's pretty good the final.
What do you think is going to win this one?
No, we're going to take it for sure.
Okay, easy. There you go. Thank you so much. No, there we go. Easy peasy. Thank you so much, Dan, for another interview. Are you okay? Are you okay?
I'm not afraid of the violent host.
See you, Dan. Thank you so much for the interview. And there you go. Do you need help?
Not from this man. No,
I was
here
gonna
he
say,
slaps
maybe
people
from
awake.
Romero, but not from you.
No, the violence is towards me. It's different. I'm not the one delivering the violence.
I think we just need to.
You
change
said
subject.
I am a violent
subject
person.
Change. Subject change. Archer, do your hosty stuff.
Do your hosty stuff. Okay, obviously I was trying to get some sort of information to understand if the team suffered from that defeat on Monday. Usually that's something that can happen to these players. Okay, we are on first place. It's really easy to get to first place. It's really hard to stay first place. And obviously getting a defeat like that, I'm going to put it like this, easy way, it's a fun to wake up, but it seems like the team is ready to move on.
And I think it, again, I'm going to liken this a little bit to some of the interviews we had from Eminem, because of course they've had a couple of our losers interviews when they've talked in a similar way, particularly Kemera, who is coming on and saying, we were aware we should have done X, Y, Z. We're taking things from this loss and we can learn from it. I think when Dan was speaking there, saying, actually, just around this third dragon, we had this one small mess up around here. And when Torok was saying on the interview, we messed up around our swap into the Draven. Having identifiable things to say we can walk away and we can deal with this is very important for the development of a team. So I don't think that's a big mental impact. I think that is something which is a good learning opportunity.
But here's the thing, though. It's always easy identifying your issues, or at least it can be easier. The real struggle comes when you have to fix them, and you need to find out how you actually do that, what you need to incorporate, sacrifices from players at times.
Don't steal blow buff.
Well, that is one thing for sure, but it's also a very niche one to go by. I think there's more into the game. Yes,
Sure.
it obviously mattered, but I even think there's more that can matter to it as well. I just think that that's where you see like how this JDXL team will develop over the course of the split, and not only just the course of the split, but also in terms of if they go up against LFL teams at European Masters, if they make it to there, because you're not going to be able to get away with small mistakes like you can be against some of the teams you have in NLC. You have to bring your A game every game.
And they have a big window to work as well. You're now running out of time. It's still in first place, so you can work on those issues if you need to. On Vanir side, though, I want to talk with Kreox, the jungler as well. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing? Obviously, a tough one, but tell me, a lot of priority was going to the top side. You did wonderful ganks, by the way, really sneaky. But why so much priority to the Gragas?
Hello guys. I think we just wanted to punish, bot was pretty scaling, right? Ezreal Yumi, and on top is just it's easier to create a play. So we thought punishing Aurelia or helping Gragas, because it's really hard matchup for him, because Aurelia always freezing the wave. So we have to help him, and I think we didn't accelerate the advantage on the Drakes or in the fights that properly. For example, third Drake, our preparation for Drake was bad in terms of vision and tempo. And the next fight, I think we just misplayed it so hard. We was splitted from the start. I used ultimate on Aurelia. That was so Ericsson just ulted Aurelia, who was 0-4 and had no ultimate already. So it was disaster, because I could just use another Cyclone or just engage on Zeri or Corki, who was much stronger in the fight. So that created a side defeat. And then I think the Gromp death was really bad, because they take Nashor from that, and it was hard to play after.
So that's a lot of stuff about what happened in the execution of the fights, and we were definitely looking over some of those replays and saying, actually, it did come down to a lot of execution things. One thing which I'd love to backtrack all the way back to draft, though, and we asked a similar kind of question to the other interview from JDXL, was in terms of the very first couple of picks. You ended up picking the Ezreal Yumi. Now, when you see the Zeri on the other side and you first pick the Yumi, a lot of the time the answer is actually the Twitch. Was that something that you were prepared to pick, or why? Or if you didn't pick it, what was the reason for the Ezreal over it?
I think maybe it's Mirp's comfort as well. I think he plays
for sure.
Ezreal.
Champion for him.
Yeah, I think he's played Ezreal pretty well. So, and they have Volibear. I think Twitch can play into Volibear, but I think Ezreal just more safe, I guess. So we choose Ezreal. Just Ezreal and not in the Twitch. Yeah.
Okay, to wrap it up, if possible, you guys are still in a good position to fight for playoffs. The top 6 is looking menacing, but if you could, tell me, which team do you believe you can take away from the top 6 to make your team, make it to playoffs?
I need to remember the standings on the...
Okay, we have JDXL, we have X7, we have Dusty, we have Riddle, we have Bifrost and Astralis. Oh, there you go.
I mean, I think probably it will be... Maybe it's a hot take, but I'm not gonna say X7, but maybe Astralis or even Dusty, because I think they have a lot of wins, but they're playing really shaky. And Kerberos just giving them a lot of wins with the split push. And we kind of came to breakpoint that we're actually progressing as a team only right now. And I think we can show up a better performance for sure on our next games.
Okay. Thank you for this one, Kreox. Good luck on Wednesday, and let's see what happens. See you, man.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Artrom, you're on a one-man mission to try and create like civil war in the NLC.
Astralis has gotten 2 of those. Who do you think you can take games away from? So that's quite interesting.
Cool thing. Astralis are playing next. But before that, I want to look into the standings and really focus on what is happening. I was kind of distracted talking with Kreox, so I couldn't see those standings. Thank you so much. There we go. Vanir are still in 7 spots. Close to X7 in reality, but Dusty securing themselves 3rd spot on this one. I don't know, taking Dusty out of the equation is not an easy task.
No, and again, like as much as these games have been showing some kind of shift up, particularly on the 6 and 4 teams in our results so far, honestly, it just feels like these games are more about showing the current level of the teams, and we've had some close games. We've had some games come down to execution, come down to very close affairs. For me, it's more about showing your actual current level than actually getting huge differences in the standings currently.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because moving forward to playoffs, once again, it's so close, right? But if you can be the one with the better form already now, moving forward in towards playoffs, or even actually, it's a double, obviously it's a coin with 2 sides, but this coin has the side that, oh, it's good showing you good form coming into mid-game, seeing who's the best, but it's also like, oh, if you start losing games now, also really good luxury to have here mid-split and not so much towards the later ones.
As long as that doesn't become a trend, it's got to be a learning experience.
That's what I mean, right? Because like we say that now, mid-split, where it's this close. But we're definitely going to stop saying it if you go down towards Eminem and Nariki's way, where it's like, yes, you're looking good, but these wins, they need to come now.
Yeah, so for instance, if you take a team like in the LEC, Mad Lions from Spring, now they had some wins, and particularly in the very last couple of weeks, where they'd kind of band-aid over a lot of systematic cracks they had. And like, look, you have to play this champion, it'll work out. And that's not something you can do in playoffs. You can kind of do that in some best of ones. If you have teams band-aiding right now to try and get into playoffs, that's a problem. If they're trying to fix things underneath that to perform better for playoffs, that's where the real value will come from.